Oh, hello. Welcome to the 2013 Hundie Challenge. Today we're going to be discussing Jong Il by Rudiger Kindling. Okay, well, if you followed along with me this far, you know that my goal with this challenge is to acquaint myself with the classics and the classic authors that are generally understood to be needed to have been read for someone to be considered well-read, whether they're good or not. For instance, I'm discovering a passionate hatred of Faulkner. Rudyard Kipling. Okay, so this is where some of the issues with this list start to become apparent, and it is a very weird, random list. The main problems with it being it almost exclusively focuses on England and America, and it's only in the 20th century. So someone like Kipling, he happened to write Kim in the 20th century, so it made the cut. But you would think that, The Jungle Book or, Gunga Din, or, you would feel like the more important great or so-called, we can get into the controversy later, but let's say the important Kipling works were earlier. So this is one of those instances where the limitations of the list become, kind of glaringly apparent. Kim is not, to my thinking, a famous Kipling work. I don't think I ever heard of it. That could just be my ignorance, but I feel like his famous stuff was 19th century. All that being said, preface, prologue, what have you, let's talk about the list we've been dealt. Let's talk about this book. So all that being said, Kipling is obviously a controversial author, maybe not so controversial today, but he is a colonialist, and I guess you'd almost say kind of an unrepentant colonialist. I think he genuinely probably felt that British colonialism was good for the people of the colonies, but even so, you can obviously see, and you can see in Kim especially, that he satirizes colonialism. What I think is valuable about him, whether you consider him to be just a disgraceful white man or, white supremacist or what have you. But I think what's important about him is that he genuinely knows what he's talking about. So if nothing else, as a record of colonial British colonies, he genuinely knows about India. So if for no other reason than that it is an accurate depiction of the time, whatever you think of that time, and whether you think Kipling is more sympathetic to the natives or more sympathetic to the British, that's all debatable. But I didn't really know any of this going in. As I've repeatedly said, I'm not doing thesis work here. I'm trying to get through this list. I'm trying to read each book, maybe get a little glimpse into what's going on, but I'm not reading the introductions, I'm not reading the prefaces and all that shit. But that being said, I did not know how knowledgeable Kipling was. This guy was throwing out 3 or 4 references a page that had to be footnoted. Little towns and places in Pakistan, which at the time was British India, and rituals and vocabulary and terms, and he obviously has a really broad understanding of India and all of the what seems like hundreds and hundreds of cultures therein. Now this story is about Sahib, which is, I think that only really applies to white men, but I think sometimes you will call a really wealthy, important Indian, like a Raja or whatever, a Sahib, maybe. But Sahib in this context generally means the white colonialists. So Kim is Kimball O'Hara. He is the son of a Irish, I guess we would presume North Irish, although I don't know if that was going on at that time. I'm guessing a North Irish soldier who, his dad died, his mom died, he became an orphan, lived on the streets of Lahore, I want to say. Anyway, it all takes place in modern-day Pakistan. Kim meets... He's a street rat. He'd remind you of like Aladdin from the movie. But he meets a lama from Tibet who has come with this pie-in-the-sky kind of theory, which supposedly there's a story that the Buddha shot an arrow into the air. Where the arrow landed, a river sprang forth that grants serenity, immortality, whatever, all the good stuff. He's never really 100% clear on what this river will grant you, but his life's goal is to find the river. Kim's life's goal, which he also has, is to find a Red Bull in a green field. That's what his dad told him before he died. Lo and behold, the Red Bull on the green field is the North Irish colors of his dad's regiment. So they find this regiment. Obviously, the Sahibs want to keep him. Now, the Lama, he felt that Kim was his greatest disciple, the greatest disciple that any Lama could ever have. But he is also, being a Buddhist, feels like the way of the world is on a wheel and you have to take stuff as it comes. And maybe it's part of, if Kim's destiny was to find the Red Bull, then the only way he'll ever find the river is if he lets Kim follow his destiny, and come back to him when he can, and so on and so forth. So Kim trains in the ways of the colonialists, and he gets caught up in the Great Game. Now, I'm glad I knew a little bit about the Great Game before coming into this, which I feel like it usually refers to Afghanistan, but the Great Game is the whole feud, kind of like the Cold War of the 19th century, between Russia and Britain about who would be in charge of, I always thought it was primarily Afghanistan, but India, Pakistan, the whole subcontinent, I guess. And it was really like the Cold War. It was like, pressing chess pieces around for them. So Kim gets taken on as a secret agent. Now, this is interesting, being as I just read The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. It's really interesting seeing how 19th century people approached spying, not to mention spy literature. The spies of the 19th century are all just kind of like regular people who, for whatever reason, have gotten caught up in spying. They're not James Bond. They're not the Jason Bournes. So Kim takes to the Great Game like a duck to water. And he's kind of like, he reminded me in a way of Paul Atreides from Dune, in the sense that I feel like both of them had to be an outsider to be all things to all people. Or Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence had to be white. Atreides had to be an Atreides to be able to, work with the Fremen, work with all the Fremen. And they are kind of part and parcel of everything, but only by dint of the fact that they're an outsider. So I feel like this is a recurring thing in literature. Like, when you're the outsider, you're capable of partaking of every religion and politics and everything that's going on in the world, only by dint of the fact that you are an outsider. Whereas, if Kim had just been a regular street urchin, he never would have got involved in the Great Game. Maybe he would have followed the Lama, maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have been so great. It was a really fascinating story. I feel like it was really sympathetic to the Indian people. And at a minimum, it was like brilliantly researched. Now, I didn't really like the footnotes on The Secret Agent. I felt like they were really distracting. Obviously, I had the same publisher. This was another Barnes & Noble book. with the same number of footnotes, and it was annoying because like 90% of them were like, a town 40 miles outside Lahore, village 23 miles outside of Simla. They were all like that, and I'm like, I get it, I know it's a place name, but some of them are interesting, especially like the religious and the political vocab that we're not so familiar with. So, sorry to go on so long. It's kind of a complicated book with a complicated history, I feel like, but pretty good. I think I would search out more Kipling when the challenge is over. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.